First Class Productions.
Back in 2011, LA Noire felt like a pretty special release. Developed by Team Bondi and published by Rockstar Games for PS3 and Xbox 360, it puts you in the role of a detective, solving cases, searching crime scenes, questioning suspects, and slowly working your way through 1940s Los Angeles. That alone gave it a different identity, but the real headline at the time was the facial animation. The game used motion scan technology to capture actors' faces with a level of detail that looked genuinely striking back then. That was a huge part of LA Noire's appeal. This game was built around reading people, studying their expressions and deciding whether someone was nervous, hiding something, or just naturally looked shady. In 2011, that felt incredibly ambitious, and for a while it seemed like LA Noire might be the start of something big. It also has a bit of personal history for me, because this is one of the very few games I ever bought on launch day for full price. I almost never do that. This game, however, was different. I was interested right away and reviewed it for the German YouTube channel Tendo TV. Later on, I translated that review for my own channel. That translated review is my least watched video on this channel to this day, which is a bit unfortunate because I really liked the game back then. In fact, I liked it enough to say that I'll definitely come back to it one day. I didn't. But now the time has finally come, because today marks the 15th anniversary of this game. And that feels like the perfect excuse to revisit it, take another look with fresh eyes, and see how well this very specific detective adventure holds up today. Major spoiler warning, by the way. For this re-review, I'm playing the remastered PS4 version, which is also available on Xbox One and Switch. So join me as I find out if LA Noire still impresses me as much as it did at launch.
GFrom, the gamer, the legend, he's come to show you the way in this world of games. GFrom Reviews.
This game tells the story of Cole Phelps and his rise through the ranks of the LAPD in 1947. Phelps, a decorated Marine lieutenant turned LAPD recruit, is precisely the kind of photogenic figure the department's power brokers can use to counter accusations of corruption and brutality. Even though LA Noire is technically an open-world game, the main story is completely linear and split into separate cases. So as long as you stay in story mode, you're always working on something. You begin as a patrol officer, and upon reflection, serves as your first case. Cole and his partner Ralph Dunn get a call about a shooting and are asked to help with an evidence search. After a short drive to the scene, they're briefed by homicide detectives Floyd Rose and Rusty Galloway. And from here the investigation begins.
And if we recover the weapon,
bag it and return it to technical services.
You hurry it up, Floyd. We got places to be.
Happy hunting.
Looking for clues is one of the game's core mechanics, and whenever you get close to something important, you hear a little chime. This feature can be turned off if that's too easy for you. The first thing I came across was a newspaper. That one isn't tied to the case, but instead part of a Collectibles series scattered throughout the city. These newspapers unlock little scenes that provide extra background information, often involving psychiatrist Dr. Fontaine. There's something about that man that immediately sets off alarm bells, which of course means people like war veteran and medical student Courtney Sheldon trust him with their lives.
We try to find ways to unlock the mind again through a combination of therapy and drug treatment.
Not everything you can examine is useful. This bottle, for example, is simply irrelevant, and Cole usually has no problem saying so.
It would take a smarter man than me to connect that.
Clues can also be parts of the environment rather than objects you pick up, and your notebook keeps track of everything important. You'll be checking that thing quite a lot. To get a gun on the rooftop, you have to climb a drain pipe, which shows that police work occasionally includes a bit of spontaneous light exercise. Important clues can often be turned around and inspected more closely to find specific details. And the controller vibrates when you hit the right angle. It's a neat little touch. You also know you've found every clue once the music stops, which is very helpful.
we should follow up on this now, before the perp tries to leave town.
As long as you pay attention to that, you probably won't walk away while the game is still quietly begging you to check one more corner. Cole is determined to find the gun's owner. He's more ambitious than done and eager to prove himself. On the drive to the gun store, you get your first proper feel for the vehicle controls. Back in 2011, I thought they were great and a clear improvement over the awkward driving in GTA 4. Today, the cars drive well enough, but I've certainly seen better. In the bottom left corner, you've got a mini-map showing your destination, but you can also ask your partner for directions. At the gun store, the owner lets you inspect the order book, and that leads you to the name and address of Errol Schroeder. Whenever you enter your car, you can manually choose the next destination, which is one of those small features that doesn't sound exciting until it's missing. By checking the mailbox, you figure out which apartment Schroeder lives in. He then responds to police presence in the calmest, most reasonable way possible by resisting arrest and starting a fistfight. The combat is very basic. While holding L2, you press X to punch and square to block. It's simple and gets the point across. Nobody's here for a deep boxing simulator. Inside the apartment, you find a notebook containing Detective Floyd Rose's number, but Dunn talks Phelps out of taking it. Very sensible, really. Rose doesn't come across as the kind of man you casually annoy.
Phelps, we can come out of this all bright and shiny with a commendation. Or stick our schlongs in a hornet's nest. Call it in, partner. And leave the book where you found it.
This surely is a slow start, but a solid introduction to the structure, the mechanics, and the general mood of the game. More importantly, it pulled me in right away. The atmosphere is strong, the setup is intriguing, and I'm ready to see where Cole Phelps ends up next. Every now and then you get flashbacks to Cole's time in the army during World War II. This first one is vague and doesn't tell you much beyond the fact that he's about to be sent into the war in the Pacific.
The Japanese will do the world a favor and kill you quickly.
Armed and Dangerous is a very short mission. You're called to an armed robbery, grab a shotgun from your trunk and put a stop to it. This is straightforward cover-based shooting and there aren't many surprises here. You aim, pop out of cover, fire, and a few criminals have a very bad day. What I do like though is that your partner helps out and takes down enemies as well, which makes them a little more useful than you might think. It's the kind of gunplay you've already seen in more games than anyone needs, but to be fair, it works well enough.
They talk about officers like you in boot camp, Cole. They call it the Custer syndrome. Guys who go around dreaming of fame and glory and getting all of their men killed in the process.
Our duty is to lead, Kelso.
And their duty is to die for your wonderful future?
Well, it's a shame you don't like to talk about it, Cole. Ralph, friends who want to stay friends don't discuss religion or politics.
Hard to argue with that.
In my case, you can add the war to that.
In Warrants Outstanding, Cole and Dunn spot a guy who skipped parole, which leads straight into the first on-foot chase sequence. Cole vaults over fences simply by running at them, and you'll also climb ladders and drain pipes along the way, though getting too close to the suspect is not recommended unless you'd like a shoe launched directly into your face. I failed the first time because I missed a jump. Failing means replaying the whole sequence, which isn't too painful since the chase is so short. Like every chase in the game, this one eventually ends, this time with a fist fight. These sequences are usually a decent way to give the pacing a quick boost, and this early one is fairly harmless.
It's over, Bowers!
Buyer Beware is the first case that feels properly involved. Cole hears gunshots, arrives at the scene, and finds a dead man lying on the sidewalk outside a store. From here on, the game opens up a bit more and gives you several things to look into. The first thing I did was examine the body. You can inspect the head, both arms, and the torso, and that leads to a document hidden in the victim's jacket. Inside the store, you can then question your first witness. It's usually a good idea to snoop around before talking to anyone, because the more information you already have, the better prepared you are for what is L.A. Noire's signature mechanic. Using your notebook, you question witnesses and have to study their facial expressions and mannerisms very carefully while they answer. The idea is to determine whether they're telling the truth, being evasive, or lying outright. Here the remaster already managed to throw me off for a second, because on PS3 the options were truth, doubt, and lie, while now they've been changed to good cop, bad cop, and accuse. If you decide to accuse someone, you need actual evidence to back it up, though the game is at least merciful enough to let you back out if you realize you've got nothing. The document I found contradicts the witness's statement, so that turned out nicely. Picking the right responses earns you experience, raises your rank, and unlocks rewards like outfits and intuition points, which I'll get to later. More importantly, it usually gets you extra clues. Getting the questioning wrong can mean missing useful information, which isn't ideal in a detective game where the entire point is to not not be terrible at detective work. After that, you have several locations to visit. Sometimes it doesn't matter where you go first, while other times you may need a lead from one place to fully tidy another. There are even moments where you can skip certain witnesses without any real penalty, though I wouldn't recommend it. One guy later tries to run for it, and this time you can aim your weapon at him. If you keep him in your sights long enough, Cole fires a warning shot and the suspect gives up. That can be a bit awkward later when suspects disappear around corners or sprint through busy streets, but this one is very manageable. Back at the station, Captain Donnelly asks Phelps to handle the interrogation himself and try to get a confession out of the suspect.
Bring me a confession, young Phelps. This is your chance. Don't fail me.
The game now stops holding up cue cards and counts on you to figure things out on your own. Back in 2011, I remember finding these choices pretty difficult, but with this guy, it's almost comical how obvious the lying is. He avoids eye contact so aggressively you start to wonder if he's trying to confess through body language alone. If the answer itself doesn't make things clear enough, you can often just watch what the suspect does afterwards, and that tells you everything. Hey! Did you drink my beer? No. Okay, didn't think so. In the end, he confesses, and Cole's time as a patrol officer is officially over. So far, I'm having a good time with the game, even if it's guiding me along very carefully for the most part. I have a strong feeling that won't last much longer. From this point on, I'm not going to break down every single case in great detail because first of all, that would take forever, and second, it would get very repetitive. LA Noire has a lot of cases, and while many of them have their own little twists and standout moments, going through each one step by step would quickly turn this review into its own police report. So instead, I'm going to focus more on what each desk adds to the game, which cases stand out the most, and how well the overall structure holds together. Cole gets promoted to detective on the traffic desk, Stefan Bukowski becomes his new partner, and this is where it really starts to feel like the game people remember. Cases now tend to begin at the police station, which means you'll spend a lot of time walking down the stairs, through the hallway and out to your car. More importantly, they get broader, more varied, and generally more interesting. The game introduces one of my favorite features, letting your partner drive. Los Angeles is a big city, and while the driving is alright, you spend a lot of time in your car simply driving from A to B. So being able to skip straight to the destination without missing any dialogue is de facto great. Optional street crimes start popping up at this point. I only did one during my story playthrough and saved the rest for later, but they're a decent way to break things up with a quick chase or shootout if you want a little distraction between main cases or want to gain XP. You meet Coroner Malcolm Carruthers, who quickly becomes one of the game's best recurring side characters. The case report system starts rating your performance with up to 5 stars depending on how many clues you found, how many questions you got right, and how much destruction you caused along the way to your own vehicle, innocent people, or half the city. What makes Traffic stand out is that it takes simple setups and turns them into something messier. The driver's seat is a perfect example. It begins with an abandoned car, blood all over the inside, and every sign pointing towards a straightforward murder. But the more you look into it, the more it all falls apart into a pathetic fake disappearance involving pig blood, a failing marriage, and a man trying to run away from his own life in the dumbest way possible. It's excellent because it lets you piece things together yourself, whether by checking the house or arranging the pipes for the water heater and realizing something is unmistakably off. The console's car was brand new to me because back in the PS3 days it was a North America exclusive, while over here in Europe it was paid DLC. So the remaster including all 5 extra missions as mandatory parts of the story makes the game longer than it used to be for me. This one has a nice rhythm to it, turning the theft of a diplomatic vehicle into a chain of clues with missing tools and an illegal street race through the LA River. You can either apprehend the suspect or kill him and it doesn't change the score, just what Leary says to you at the end. It's also a good example of how interviews can affect the flow, because if you don't get everything right with Anna Rodriguez, you don't get the location to the race but have to trail her instead to reach it. After all this time, it was nice to play a mission that used to be locked behind the wrong continent. A Marriage Made in Heaven at first looks like a routine hit and run, but it turns into a murder investigation interrogation. I like that one because it shows how the order in which you find stuff can actually matter. If you miss the hidden knife the first time, you have to come back for it later. Then, a slip of the tongue, the second DLC mission starts out with just another stolen car before opening up into a full-blown auto-fraud racket. Forged pink slips, fake identities, and a wider network of shady connections reveal themselves as you dig deeper. Not this shit again. Mr. Console, why did you crash mid-game? Listen, I'm trying to solve a case here. People are lying, cars are stolen, and I would really appreciate your cooperation. Gene Archer is one of the key names that comes up, and I used an intuition point for the first time. That mechanic removes one dialogue option, though in practice I don't find it all that useful because it usually removes good cop or accuse, which, depending on the situation, is often what I had already mentally ruled out anyway. It's one of the more eventful parts of this section and eventually erupts into a warehouse shootout. This chapter peaks for me with the Fallen Idol, the final traffic case. It begins with a crash right outside the police station, which is almost considerate of the game, but the leads make the whole thing feel grim. There's underwear in the car belonging to an injured minor, a letter from her mother asking her to come home, and a fake shrunken head pointing toward the film world. This is also one of the rare times where Cole briefly drops the professional mask and lets loose for a moment.
Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him, Horatio.
From there, it moves into much darker territory, pulling you into a sleazy Hollywood mess involving an actress, a movie producer, and a world of exploitation, blackmail, and abuse. Something I've hated ever since Driver 2 on the PS1 is tailing missions. You have to keep your distance without losing the target, but if you get too close, they become suspicious. Which is funny because apparently it's less suspicious when the same car keeps awkwardly stopping in the middle of the road 20 meters behind them. It's a dumb mechanic, and these sections usually outstay their welcome. Thankfully, this one is short. The Silver Screen Prop Store sounds like a quirky little location until you find the secret camera room and realize things have become properly revolting. It ends with the biggest set piece in the game so far, as Cole chases the manager across the collapsing movie set while mobsters show up and everything descends into a loud, messy conclusion. It's not Uncharted, but it doesn't need to be. It works as a strong climax and as a bridge into what comes next.
You're getting promoted. Go on, get your new assignment. It was good working with you, son.
Vice Detective Roy Earl, who just makes me think of Roy and Earl from Dinosaurs, invites Phelps and Bukowski for a celebratory night out at the club.
Cole, this is Alphonse. He's a French Negro from Africa. Can you beat that?
The Congo. A pleasure to meet you, Alphonse.
Is Elsa singing tonight?
Yes, she is. She has the next set.
Come on, Cole, you can meet Elsa while they're fixing us a table. You'll like her. She's something else.
Maybe another night, Roy. She's pretty beat up about it.
Get your hands off me.
That's racist.
Elsa, a German exile singing at the Blue Room, is introduced to Phelps by Earl, and his casual cruelty towards her contrasts with Phelps' disgust and with the attraction Phelps can't quite admit to himself yet. From here on out, he'll visit the club frequently. You're married with children, Cole. Don't do anything stupid. After his promotion to Homicide, Cole gets partnered with Rusty Galloway. Rusty is much rougher and more cynical than Bukowski, and he often seems perfectly happy to pin things on the first man who looks guilty enough, while Cole comes across as more cautious. That tension between the two does a lot to define this arc. Right from the red lipstick murder, Captain Donnelly acknowledges that Cole is now in the major leagues, and the game proves it by dropping you into a murder scene that admittedly shocked me back in 2011. I didn't think it would get that graphic. The victim has been beaten, mutilated, and left with lipstick writing on her body. The police start talking about the so-called werewolf killer. There's a horrible pattern hanging over everything that's making you feel increasingly uncomfortable. The game keeps throwing suspicious men at you and asking whether they're killers, creeps, or simply unfortunate enough to be in the wrong place with the wrong face. Again and again, arrests are made, but they never feel entirely convincing. That growing uncertainty becomes one of the most interesting things about Homicide. At the same time, the individual chapters have enough personality to keep things engaging. The Golden Butterfly was one of the moments where the facial animation really clicked for me, because Hugo Muller was the first actor I actually recognized back on my original playthrough, and that made the interview scenes even stronger for me. Greg Grunberg as a potential murderer. Whoever has seen Heroes immediately sees that the facial expressions fit him perfectly. The silk stocking murder stands out for being unusually gory, even by this desk's standards, with a blood trail leading you to a rooftop. It features a bartender who looked awfully familiar to me. Of course, it's the barkeeper from How I Met Your Mother. Talk about typecasting. The white shoe slang changes the mood a bit by having rain wash away the evidence. The trail drags you through multiple corners of Los Angeles, including a hobo camp, which gives this part a grim street-level feel. Then the studio secretary murder adds a more theatrical flavor, with fake names, literary clues, and the strong sense that the killer is enjoying the performance. Alright then, keep acting tough. You freeze in the middle of a case and now you sit there like you know nothing? The ending is especially good because you keep going back and forth between interrogating the main suspects, trying to figure out which one is the worst. And then, when that structure has almost worn itself out, the Quarter Moon Murders blows it open. It turns into this bizarre citywide scavenger hunt. You follow hints across LA, pick up personal items from the earlier victims, and decipher poems. The poems give you hints about the next destination, and it helps to know the city. If you're completely out of ideas, look it up online, use an intuition point, or click around on the map until you're told you've got the right location. This part I don't care for, but the rest is interesting. You move through some of the more unique set pieces. Balancing on a chandelier, using wooden walkways under tar, going through the museum maze, and escaping a collapsing set all give the finale a much broader scale. It's a bit more overtly game-like than the rest of Homicide, but that's why it succeeds. After so many investigations built on dread and gore, we need a release, and the Quarter Moon Murders gives it one without losing the rot underneath. It ends in the catacombs beneath the church. You're chasing the killer through underground tunnels and finishing it with a proper shootout. Unfortunately, Donnelly makes it very clear that the department doesn't want the truth, only closure.
Because there won't be any press briefings or commendations.
What are you talking about? We got the werewolf, the guy who killed the Dahlia, killed all the other broads.
You got no one. Mason was a ghost.
Can you at least tell us why, Captain?
Mason is the half-brother of one of the most highly elected officials in this country.
Even with the real killer dead, political constraints prevent full public accountability, and earlier wrong charges remain a stain on the system's outcomes. The system can tolerate closure, but not exposure, especially when perpetrators are protected by wealth or political influence. Homicide has the strongest arc thus far, the nastiest tone, and a conclusion that at last pays off all that doubt that has been building from the start. With Cole's promotion to Vice, he's partnered with sleazebag Roy Earl. Bukowski felt dependable, Rusty felt blunt and worn down, but Roy gives out the energy of a man who would sell you out for a sandwich and then complain that the sandwich was disappointing. His primary motivation is opportunism. He's corrupt, vain, and transactional. The Black Caesar is a strong opener because it starts with two dead junkies in a filthy apartment, both killed by stolen government morphine. From there you keep moving through one grimy location after another, from the Black Caesar food hut to a booking agency, a numbers racket, a removals company, and eventually the Polar Bear Ice Company. It gives Vice a strong sense of momentum, with more chases, more suspects trying to run, and more action in general, even if the awkward crane section is memorable for reasons the game probably didn't intend. Ugh, so slow. Reefer Madness, a DLC mission, leans into a bit of silliness. The whole marijuana through soup cans setup is the kind of dumb but clever scheme that you could almost laugh at.
Ha! Phelps, you jump like a girl.
Then the setup swings Vice into entertainment and gambling by dropping you into the boxing world. A boxer has failed to throw a fight and is now being hunted by the people who lost money on him. The key connective tissue is Mickey Cohen, whose financial stake puts organized crime in the room with Vice's investigations. When the woman closest to the boxer ends up dead and the fixer tries to murder his own asset, Phelps' decision highlights a moral divide with Earl. Phelps treats the boxer as a frightened pawn and lets him go when it's evident he's not the criminal. while Earl's investment in the system is about payoff and control. This part has a nice sense of urgency because you're practically searching for one doomed idiot through liquor stores, drugstores and bus stations before the mob gets there first. The Egyptian theater gives it a solid climax. The Naked City, the 4th DLC, gives Vice a more glamorous kind of filth, opening with the apparent suicide of a model. You uncover morphine abuse, blackmail and burglary hiding behind polished surfaces. There's an on-foot tailing mission which might be my least favorite part of the game. I failed so many times, the game asked me if I wanted to skip the sequence. So you think I suck? Yeah, you kinda suck. And then Manifest Destiny pulls all of that together into Vice's strongest story mission. Hope you paid attention to the newspapers and flashbacks. This is where the morphine trail from the war, Courtney Sheldon's role in it, Jack Kelso's growing importance, Mickey Cohen's criminal reach and Cole's personal collapse all collide at once. Cole tells Elsa's cab to her apartment and despite his marriage, they begin an affair. Roy understands how useful that affair could be against him. While it keeps escalating through club visits, shootings, a sniper attack and the hunt for Kelso, Cole is also quietly destroying his own career.
Good to see you.
I'm conducting an investigation.
Upstairs in my office now.
This man is about to confess.
As of now, you're suspended from duty, pending a fitness review.
What are you talking about?
You heard the man, Phelps. Upstairs and face the music like the hero you were.
By the end of Manifest Destiny, the morphine shenanigans, Cole's war past and his affair with Elsa all slam together hard enough to blow up his life. And Roy is more than happy to help with that. He betrays Phelps by leaking the affair to the press, redirecting heat away from Vice's corruption into a human interest scandal that the city's leadership can safely consume.
What is going on here?
Your wife's attorney has pictures of you and the German. Compromising pictures.
She's pressing charges. You'll be formally charged with adultery. A criminal cannot serve as an LAPD officer, as I'm sure you're aware.
I don't understand.
How could you do it, lad? Your wife, your children, consorting with the enemy and a dope fiend at that. You're lucky the war is over. You'd be taken out and shot. The department doesn't need this kind of publicity, Phelps. Hand over the gun, keep your head down until your board hearing.
The consequence is immediate and material. Cole's wife expels him and he retreats to Elsa's apartment, now professionally disgraced and personally unmoored. On a personal note, this didn't hit me that hard because you've only seen the wife for a short moment at the very beginning and you don't know what his family life has been like. So while it's tragic that he cheated on her, as a player, I don't care enough about their relationship to feel much because it was never a meaningful part of the story.
I can't stand it, Cole!
Vice pushes the main story forward in a much bigger way than the earlier discs. While it has some fun individual moments, what makes it noteworthy is the way it turns the game's corruption, personal failure and larger conspiracy into one big mess that Cole can no longer keep at arm's length. The Arson desk gives LA Noire another major shift because after the scandal, Cole gets dumped into a department that feels like a career graveyard. His new boss seems more than happy to remind him that he's damaged goods now.
I don't care what you did or didn't do, Phelps. I hear you're a good case man. But if you fuck up on my detail, I'll have you out of here before your feet touch the ground.
The Gas Man is a strong opener. What begins with 2 house fires gradually turns into something much dirtier involving gas installations, crooked business and murder disguised as accidents. It also introduces Herschel Biggs as your new partner. He's older, steadier and far more decent, which makes him a terrific fit for this part of the story. There's a nice detective rhythm too, especially once you start checking the gas fitters and lockers. Wait a minute. This can't be! Pierre! So you did drink my beer. What do you expect me to do, man? Pierre is everywhere. First, Pierre harassed me in Tomb Raider, then Pierre came back in Tomb Raider Chronicles. There's a Pierre in the Angel of Darkness because core design ran out of French names. In Spyro Season of Ice, there's a llama with a funny hat, and what's his name? Pierre. In Spyro Season of Flame, you're strolling through a Christmas level, and who's standing there again? Pierre. Pierre. I can't even time travel back to 1947 without Pierre pretending to be an author of an anarchist essay. So please excuse me for trying to ease my pain. I'll drink to that. Elysian Fields appears as a lead, and the pattern of fires begins to read as economic strategy rather than random pyromania. From there, A Walk in Elysian Fields starts tightening the grip on the bigger conspiracy. The Morelli house fire is one of the harshest scenes in the game because an entire family dies in the blaze, and it also gives Biggs one of his best moments when the sight hits him so hard that he opens up about his own war experience and his hatred for whoever is behind these fires.
There's gonna be no photos and no citations. We're gonna kill this miserable fuck. End of story. You getting this?
There's also an important story beat in the Blue Room in which Roy warns Cole to stay away from Elysian Fields. Then it ends with that wonderfully absurd hijacked tram sequence, where subtle police work takes a backseat to ramming public transport until your partner can shoot out a wheel. It's ridiculous in a good way. Elsa learns she'll receive a large insurance settlement for a friend's death tied to an Elysian Fields project. Phelps urges her to reject the money and take the matter to Kelso, keeping his name out of it. Then it takes a sharp turn with House of Sticks, because unexpectedly, you're playing as Jack Kelso instead of Cole. Elsa asks him to look into her friend's suspicious death. You investigate a demolished house, and then this. The bulldozer chase is kinda crappy, and again the game asked me if I wanted to skip it. Yeah, I needed some time to figure out what to do. It's not like I get chased by bulldozers every day.
Sorry, pal. Just when I thought we were starting to get on.
Later, some goons beat Jack senseless, shove him into a trunk, and nearly finish him off. That's a pretty dramatic workday for an insurance investigator. He manages to escape, steals a vehicle, and has to get away from the mobsters before making it to Elsa's apartment, where he stumbles in and collapses from the beating. It really drives home how vulnerable Jack is compared to Cole. He's just one guy without police backup or official authority, digging where powerful people don't want him digging, and he sure pays for it. A polite invitation continues that shift and pushes Jack even deeper into the center of the conspiracy. He wakes up in a clinic after the beating. Jack then heads straight for Curtis Benson, Vice President of California Fire and Life. And that whole section does a fabulous job of showing how different he is from Cole. He barges in, pistol whips him, tears through the apartment for evidence, and then discovers a 12-year-old girl in Benson's bed.
He's not so bad. He just lays on top of me and grunts for a few minutes. He's kind. And he buys me nice things.
Get dressed, you're leaving.
I certainly didn't expect this subject matter in one of my video game reviews. It ends with the president of Elysian Fields trying to buy him off before things turn violent.
Oh, you crazy son of a bitch!
Nicholson electroplating, the last DLC case, opens with the biggest explosion in the game. Cole and Biggs are just talking when out of the blue, half the skyline goes up in smoke. You're dealing with a full industrial disaster, looters swarming the site, and a crime scene that looks like half the neighborhood just got blasted into the next county. The opening is so huge that the rest almost has to spend time catching up with it, but it's a nice change of pace before the finale. All threads converge in a different kind of war. The only time where the player controls both Phelps and Kelso. Jack is chasing the so-called bug sprayer, while Cole and Biggs deal with the murder of Dr. Fontaine and the kidnapping of Elsa. You also get this gem by picking up a newspaper where it's revealed Courtney Sheldon was killed.
Get away from him, Phelps. This is my case.
Shut your fucking mouth! Since when does a bagman work a case?
I knew this creep wasn't on the morphine heist. Victim of his own product.
Courtney Sheldon was a corpsman, Roy. He served his country. He went out with a medical kit and an Army 45 into places that made the Valley of Death look like a picnic. He was either naive enough or dumb enough to get involved in the Suburban Redevelopment Fund, along with the mayor, the DA, Monroe, and a certain crooked cop. He was involved in the morphine heist, but he has a puncture wound in his jugular, which makes this a murder case. He was a better man than you'll ever know. You say one more word about him and I will blow your fucking head off!
Maybe the best scene in the game, not gonna lie. Eventually, the whole thing points towards a guy named Ira. The narrative connects his breakdown to a cave atrocity he committed under Phelps' orders, and trauma Fontaine exploited through morphine and hypnotherapy.
You said the house would be empty! You're killing me!
The deaths were unfortunate, but you have dealt with death before.
Why does he always talk like this? It's kinda driving me nuts.
From there, the last stretch goes all in. Tunnels, storms, shootouts, rising water, and a flamethrower-wielding madman in a marine uniform. Being able to use the flamethrower yourself is icing on the cake.
Don't you remember me, Lieutenant? I remember you. No.
Don't.
You ordered me to burn that cave, Lieutenant. That cave full of civilians. A hospital.
What is he talking about?
It was war. For God's sake, I can't be held responsible for everything that happened.
Kelso reaches Elsa and executes Ira out of mercy. Phelps lifts Elsa towards escape as water surges and sacrifices himself.
Jump for it!
That's it. Cole is dead. It's so abrupt and left me speechless on my first playthrough. What a shitty way to go. At the funeral, adding insult to injury, Roy Earl of all people delivers the eulogy, claiming Phelps was wrongly accused. Elsa interrupts in rage at the hypocrisy of corrupt officials, praising the man they destroyed. The system reclaims Phelps as myth, while the truth survives only in the people who lived it.
A good husband. A good father. And may I say, a good friend.
A good friend. A good friend.
With the main story behind me after just under 20 hours, I was surprised to see that I had not even reached 60% completion.
That meant there was plenty left to mop up, starting with 39 remaining street crimes. If you ignored those during the story, you can access them later through the main menu under Cases and then Streets of LA, which unlocks once you finish Traffic. They're tied to specific desks. So Patrol gets nothing at all, while Traffic, Homicide, Vice and Arson each have their own set. On top of that, some only appear during specific times of day, so you can't just roam around freely and presume all of them to show up whenever it suits you. Completed street crimes keep reappearing every time you re-enter the streets of LA for that department, which I find annoying already, but the game goes one better by having them trigger automatically when you get near them. That becomes especially irritating when you're trying to search for other collectibles and without warning, the game decides you're now involved in some random shootout whether you wanted that or not. So your options are to replay them or switch to a different desk and hope for peace. Finishing all of them took me about 2.5 hours, and most are very short and inoffensive. The only reason it took me that long is because I used the opportunity to actually drive around myself and soak in the atmosphere for once. And that was nice for a while. Then it became unbelievably dull. Vice in particular is brutal because the police station sits way up at the top of the map, while some of the street crimes are buried way down in the southeast, which turns into a scenic tour of wasted time. If I'm honest, I could have lived without most of these missions, because they don't add that much mechanically and very few of them are memorable. As a whole, I appreciate them because they're one of the only things that makes the city feel even remotely alive. Then there are 30 landmarks, which you mostly get by just passing near them during the story anyway.
The rest of the collectibles feel much more tacked on, and I have no shame in admitting that I used a map for those.
There are 20 hidden shields, 8 novels, 20 records and 50 golden film reels. Not all of them are required for 100% completion, and while some unlock new outfits, others just give you a trophy, which kinda sucks in my opinion. A few of them are hidden absurdly well, sometimes too well. One of them is literally underground. Not even a map is gonna help you with that. I usually don't like collectibles like this in the first place because there's no chance I'm combing the entire city on my own looking for tiny objects. The whole process quickly turns into a repetitive loop of driving to a marked point, picking something up, and then dragging myself to the next one. That alone took me another 4 hours and I recorded all of it, which in hindsight could be seen as vandalism against my hard drive. And then there's the worst collectible of them all, vehicles. You're supposed to enter every single type of car, which sounds awful already, but it gets even better. Some only appear during specific missions while others spawn randomly.
That's where I drew the line. I'm not replaying missions just to briefly sit inside a car, and the idea of keeping an Excel sheet to track which 1940s automobile I have or haven't touched is completely deranged.
So I stopped at 61 out of 95 vehicles and left the game sitting at 94.6%, which comes across as a number specifically designed to mock me. Side note, there's also the VR Case Files, which is basically a virtual reality DLC that rebuilds 7 selected cases from the main game for VR and throws in a few extra minigames on top. I've never played it myself because I don't own PlayStation VR, so I can't really judge how well the detective work translates into virtual reality. Still, the idea of leaning into interrogations, clue searching and gunfights from Cole's perspective does sound pretty fitting for a game like this.
Let's talk about the music and sound.
A lot of effort went into the audio side, with a very deliberate attempt to create a period-authentic atmosphere. The clue chime sits above the background music without feeling like some harsh arcade noise, which makes sense because that tiny little sound becomes one of the most important things in the entire game. It quietly trains you to listen like a detective. Crime scenes, offices, bars, theaters, factories, and burned out homes all have their own texture, and that helps sell the idea that you're moving through a real city instead of just another open world map with a jazz filter slapped on top. The voice acting is also one of the game's biggest strengths, and the entire interrogation system depends on performance. The voices and faces work together in a way that still stands out. Aaron Staton gives Cole a clipped, controlled delivery. Adam J. Harrington makes Roy sound as oily and punchable as he should. Gil McKinney gives Jack a guarded toughness, and Erica Haynatz brings a lot of presence to Elsa.
I don't believe you would have made a roof that would collapse.
Even smaller roles tend to be sold convincingly, which matters a lot in a game built around talking to suspicious people in little rooms for hours on end. The score is magnificent too. Andrew Hale and Simon Hale handled the orchestral score, and the music was recorded at Abbey Road, which sounds suitably classy for a game this obsessed with mood. The soundtrack has that smoky, uneasy noir flavor all over it, but it also knows when to stay out of the way. During clue searches and interrogations, the music supports the tension without becoming pushy, and then when the game leans into bigger story beats or set pieces, it can expand just enough to make them land. That restraint is a huge part of why the atmosphere works. It's no surprise that the score won the BAFTA for original music. Then there's KTI Radio, which does a lot to support the game's sense of time and space. The station mixes period songs, advertisements, news segments, and licensed old-time radio programs like the Jack Benny program and the Bickersons. And that helps the city feel far more believable during all those long drives.
The nicotine slaves are all the same at a patent party or a poker game. Everything's gotta stop while they have that cigarette. Smoke, smoke, smoke that cigarette.
Since you cannot switch between stations, KTI has to carry the whole burden by itself, and I think it accomplishes that with style. Sometimes the city itself can feel a little quiet, so the radio ends up becoming a big part of the experience. It fills dead air, gives the world personality, and helps sell the illusion that 1947 Los Angeles exists beyond whatever corpse Cole is currently kneeling next to. My favorite track is the title theme. It's so iconic. So all in all, I think the audio side of LA Noire holds up indisputably well. The sound effects are effective, the voice acting is crucial and mostly brilliant, the score is one of the game's strongest assets, and the radio gives the city a welcome pulse. Taken together, all of that is making this strange detective game feel as immersive as it does.
Save the dramatics for RKO, pal. You got bigger problems.
Let's wrap this up.
So after coming back to LA Noire 15 years later, what strikes me is how committed this game is to being its own thing. Even now, there isn't much else that feels quite like it. It drops you into 1947 Los Angeles and builds an atmosphere that feels thick enough to breathe in. The city is glamorous and exhausted at the same time. You've got the neon, the clubs, the movie sets, the fancy homes and the polished public image, but underneath all of that is dirt, corruption, war trauma, exploitation, and the sense that every institution in this world is at least a little compromised. That setting does so much for the game. LA Noire doesn't hold back when it comes to its themes. Violence against women, child abuse, racism, all of it is right there. And the game is often willing to get uncomfortable. It goes to some very dark places. Post-war LA is the perfect backdrop for a story about damaged men, buried guilt, public image, and private rot. It's also fascinating how often the game pulls from real murder investigations and old movies. A huge part of why it works is presentation. The facial animation was the big headline during its heyday, and even now it has a strange kind of power. The whole game is built around looking at people, listening to them, trying to decide whether they are frightened, evasive, guilty, or just naturally born with the face of someone who should never be left alone near a crime scene. The performances carry that beautifully. Cole Phelps is tightly wound, ambitious, and often frustrating in ways that feel very intentional. One thing I would have preferred is to see more of Cole's personal life. The flashbacks do give him some backstory and help explain parts of who he is, but for most of the game you only witness him in professional mode. That makes him a bit distant, and it kept me from connecting with him as much as I might have otherwise. The flashbacks in newspapers are a smart way of feeding you context for things that become important later. Instead of dumping all the story information on you at once, the game lets those threads build gradually in the background, and that makes later revelations feel more satisfying. I do like that each division gives you a different partner, because it does a lot to keep the long campaign from feeling too samey. That interrogation mechanic is my favorite part of the game. When LA Noire is at its best, those conversations are more gripping than most action games at full volume. You feel like nobody can be trusted. So many people lie that after a while, even a completely harmless answer starts sounding suspicious.
That's right, Bobby had a bunch of people over. We were having a good time. She said she was bored and decided to leave.
That works in the game's favor because it keeps the interviews engaging and gives the whole world this great sense of moral decay where nearly everyone is hiding something, even if it's not always murder.
Everybody lies.
The faces are usually not the hard part. Mostly you can tell rather quickly whether someone is lying or acting evasive. The real challenge is having the correct piece of evidence ready to prove it, because without that, all your brilliant detective instincts amount to little more than politely guessing. Searching a crime scene, collecting evidence, opening your notebook, then using what you've learned to pressure someone in an interview room still feels incredibly unique. It turns attention into gameplay and makes body language important. It makes hesitation important. A tiny glance to the side feels more meaningful than a lot of games manage with a giant explosion. Even small things like calling dispatch for information help with that illusion. It adds realism and makes the police work feel more grounded, but after a while those calls can also get boring because they happen often and tend to drag.
How can I help, Detective?
The same goes for clue searching in general. At its best, it feels methodical and satisfying. At worst, it can turn into you slowly walking around the edge of a room like a confused vacuum cleaner until you hear the chime. The structure helps a lot too. Watching Cole move from patrol to traffic to homicide to vice to arson gives the game a strong sense of progression, and each department changes the mood in a meaningful way. Patrol is controlled and introductory. Traffic lets the formula breathe. Homicide becomes deeply unsettling, Vice drags the wider corruption into focus, and Arson pulls everything together in one final collapse. That department-based structure gives the story shape and keeps the campaign from blurring together. The score is fantastic. It has that kind of smoky, uneasy noir flavor this game needs, and it always seems to know when to stay subtle and when to lean into a bigger moment. The radio adds even more personality, and it keeps the city feeling more alive during all those long drives. Then there are the graphics, which hold up better than I expected in several key ways. The art direction is outstanding and creates a world that feels carefully observed. Apparently, it's somewhat accurate to how Los Angeles looked at the time, but I honestly couldn't tell. On the day this video releases publicly, I'm 2 days away from visiting LA for the first time, by the way. This is one of those games where the visual style and the historical setting support each other so well, even when some technical elements show their age.
Of course, none of this means the game is flawless. It absolutely isn't.
The tailing missions are a pain in the butt, and I don't like them in any game. A mechanic I've hated ever since Tomb Raider Chronicles is balancing on ropes or planks, and seeing that kind of thing here didn't suddenly make me discover a hidden passion for it. It always feels more awkward than dramatic to me. The hand-to-hand combat is also a little weak. It functions, but only just. Punching, grabbing, blocking, and waiting for the fight to end is about as deep as it gets. The gunplay is better, though it feels a little stiff. It never ruins the game or anything, but it's rarely the reason you're excited to keep playing. There's also a repetitive side to LA Noire that becomes harder to ignore the longer you spend with it. The structure is strong, but you do start to feel the rhythm after a while. Drive somewhere, search carefully, question someone, chase somebody, maybe shoot somebody, repeat. The best cases find great ways to twist that structure, but the underlying pattern is always there. I imagine doing this for 20 hours would wear out certain players. And once you move beyond the main story and start cleaning up the remaining content, the game's weaker habits become much more obvious. Street crimes are fine in small doses, but the collectibles aren't worth the effort. You get a few outfits and some even come with perks, but that doesn't make the cleanup feel rewarding. The game also has this wonderfully stupid bit of logic where, despite being a police officer, you can just take any random car on the street whenever it suits you. That's fine from a gameplay perspective, but all the damage you cause along the way barely matters. You can slam through traffic, wreak half the neighborhood, and the main consequence is that your score at the end looks a bit grumpier than usual. Given that you can only pull out your weapon when the game asks you to, means you can't do GTA massacres, which is probably for the better. One thing that increasingly got on my nerves is how your partner asks where we're going every single time you let him drive, even when the two of you literally just talked about that 5 seconds earlier.
You can drive. And where exactly are we going? Fine. Where are we headed? And where exactly are we going? Fine. Where are we headed?
Jesus Christ, pay attention!
And where exactly are we going?
Where do we go now? Where do we go?
It's such a small thing, but after hearing it over and over again, it starts drilling into your skull.
You drive. I need to go over the case notes.
Where do we go now?
So yes, LA Noire has problems. But what keeps this game so special is that all of those flaws exist inside something with an enormous amount of personality, style, and atmosphere. It has one of the most distinctive settings of its era, a genuinely memorable cast, a story that grows darker and more cynical in interesting ways, and an interrogation system that still feels unusual and compelling all these years later. It's not the most mechanically polished game, and it's undeniably not the most convenient game to finish, but it's one of my favorite games from the PS3 era. I wholeheartedly recommend it, especially the remastered version. It gives you the full package, includes all the DLCs, and those extra missions make the desks feel fuller and the journey more complete.
If you've never played LA Noire or haven't touched it in years, go ahead and step back into this grim, stylish, beautifully compromised world and see just how much of its strange magic still holds up.
Hey everyone, this is GFrom. Thank you so much for watching episode 6 of season 6. Feel free to rate, comment, subscribe and follow me on social media. You can also support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member if you like. I'll see you later. Have a nice day.